Imagine this. You're cruising at 35,000 feet. The cabin lights are dim. Someone's watching a movie. Someone else is asleep with their head against the window. Everything feels calm, normal. And then a thought hits you. What if the plane door suddenly opened? Would people get sucked out instantly? Would the plane rip apart? Would it fall straight out of the sky? It's one of the most common fears people have about flying, and it's been fueled for decades by movies, viral clips, and internet myths. But here's the truth. A commercial airplane door opening midair is not just unlikely. Under normal conditions, it's physically impossible. Let's break down why. First, let's talk about airplane doors. Passenger aircraft don't use doors the way your house or your car does. They don't swing outward and latch shut. Most commercial planes flying in the US use what's called a plug-type door. That means the door opens inward first, then slides out and away. Why does that matter? Because once the plane is pressurized, the air inside the cabin is pushing the door firmly into the door frame. At cruising altitude, the pressure difference between the inside of the plane and the outside atmosphere can be over 8 pounds per square inch. That may not sound like much until you realize it's spread across the entire surface of the door. We're talking thousands of pounds of force pressing that door shut. So even if someone somehow unlocked every latch, which itself is extremely difficult, the door still wouldn't move. The pressure would hold it in place like it's welded shut. Could a passenger open it anyway? Short answer, no. Long answer, still no. At cruising altitude, the pressure inside the cabin is so much higher than the outside air that a human simply does not have the strength to overcome it. Even multiple people working together wouldn't be able to force it open. This isn't a safety feature that relies on electronics or sensors. It's pure physics. The higher the altitude, the tighter that door seals itself. That's why flight crews aren't worried about someone accidentally opening a door mid-flight. It can't happen. 3. But what about videos where doors have opened? You may have seen clips online showing a plane door open while the aircraft was still in the air. And yes, there have been rare incidents. But here's the critical detail most people miss. Those planes were either very close to the ground, descending rapidly, or flying at low altitude with reduced cabin pressure. In some cases, they were already preparing to land. At lower altitudes, the pressure difference between inside and outside drops significantly. That's when a door can be opened, and even then, it requires intentional action and specific circumstances. This is not something that can happen at cruising altitude over the middle of the country. What if a door somehow did open at altitude? Let's talk hypotheticals. Let's say, through a structural failure or extreme damage, an opening suddenly appears in the aircraft. The first thing that happens is rapid decompression. The air inside the cabin rushes out violently, trying to equalize pressure. You'd hear a loud bang or roar. Loose objects would fly toward the opening. Oxygen masks would drop immediately. But despite what movies show, people are not instantly sucked out like vacuum cleaners. The airflow is violent, yes, but modern aircraft cabins are designed to prevent a total catastrophic failure from a single opening. Why planes don't just rip apart? Commercial aircraft are engineered with something called fail-safe design. That means if one component fails, the structure is built to handle the stress long enough for pilots to respond. The fuselage, the body of the plane, is reinforced to distribute pressure loads. So even in a decompression event, the plane doesn't just explode or break in half. Pilots are trained extensively for this scenario. Their immediate response is to put on oxygen masks, initiate an emergency descent, get the aircraft to a breathable altitude as fast as possible. This is drilled into them over and over again in simulators. What passengers would actually experience. From inside the cabin, it would feel terrifying, but not instant death. There would be a sudden rush of wind, loud noise, cold air flooding the cabin, oxygen masks deploying. People closest to the opening would be at the highest risk, especially if they weren't restrained. That's why seat belts matter, even when the ride feels smooth. But the idea that everyone gets sucked out or the plane immediately crashes, that's Hollywood, not reality. And why this fear still exists. The fear comes from misunderstanding how airplanes work. We're used to doors being weak points in everyday life. But on an aircraft, the door is one of the strongest parts of the fuselage, not the weakest. It's designed to handle repeated pressurization cycles, extreme temperatures, and enormous forces, flight after flight, year after year. What happens if a plane door opens midair? To understand how serious or survivable a decompression event can be, we need to look at what's actually happened in real life. Because this isn't just theory. It's happened before, real incidents that tell the truth. One of the most well-known cases happened in 1988 on Aloha Airlines Flight 243. At cruising altitude, a large section of the fuselage ripped away, not just a door, but part of the aircraft's roof. The cabin was suddenly open to the sky, and yet the plane didn't fall apart. The pilots managed to control the aircraft and land it safely. Passengers were injured. One crew member tragically lost her life, but the majority of people on board survived. That single incident changed aviation safety standards forever, and it proved something important. Even severe decompression does not automatically mean total disaster. What pilots do in those moments? Pilots don't panic, they follow memory. The instant decompression is detected, they put on oxygen masks within seconds, cut communication chatter, push the aircraft into a steep but controlled emergency descent. The goal is simple: get below 10,000 feet as fast as possible. Why that number? Because above it, your body can't get enough oxygen without assistance. Below it, you can breathe normally again. Modern jets are designed to descend thousands of feet per minute without losing structural integrity. It feels dramatic inside the cabin, but it's controlled. What happens to oxygen in the cabin? Those oxygen masks that drop from the ceiling aren't connected to giant tanks. They use a chemical reaction that produces oxygen for about 12 to 15 minutes. That's not a design flaw. That's intentional, because pilots are trained to get the plane to a safe altitude well before that time runs out. As long as passengers put the mask on quickly and stay seated, survival odds remain extremely high. And why people aren't instantly sucked out? Movies love to show passengers being pulled out like they're weightless. Real life doesn't work that way. The airflow rushes toward the opening, but it's not a vacuum. People who are wearing seat belts, not directly next to the opening, and follow instructions, are very unlikely to be pulled out. Most injuries in decompression events come from flying debris, unsecured objects, or people standing up when they shouldn't be. That's why flight attendants repeat the same rules over and over. They're not being dramatic, they're being realistic. What about modern aircraft today? Planes flying in US airspace today are far safer than the ones from decades ago. Aircraft manufacturers now inspect fuselages more frequently, use stronger composite materials, track metal fatigue digitally, require stricter maintenance schedules. Doors, seals, and pressure systems are tested constantly. Many aircraft complete tens of thousands of flights without a single pressurization issue. And when problems are detected, planes are grounded immediately. No exceptions. Why social media makes it scarier than it is. Short clips don't show context. A video of a door open during landing looks terrifying, until you realize the plane is already at low altitude. Cabin pressure is nearly equalized. The pilots are fully in control. Without that context, fear fills in the blanks, and fear spreads faster than facts. The reality of flying in America. Here's the bottom line. Flying on a commercial airline in the United States is one of the safest activities you can do. You're more likely to be injured driving to the airport than experiencing a serious in-flight emergency. Plane doors don't open randomly. Planes don't explode from pressure. And pilots train for worst-case scenarios long before they ever carry passengers. The system is built with layers upon layers of safety, mechanical, procedural, and human. So what should passengers actually remember? Wear your seat belt when seated. Listen to the safety briefing. Don't panic if something unexpected happens, because what feels like chaos inside the cabin is often a well-rehearsed response in the cockpit. The idea of a plane door opening midair taps into a deep primal fear, the fear of losing control. But once you understand the physics, the engineering, and the real-world history behind it, that fear loses its grip. What looks fragile from the inside is actually one of the strongest systems humans have ever built. And the next time you're cruising at 35,000 feet, hearing that quiet hum of the engines, you'll know. That door isn't just closed. It's held shut by the laws of physics themselves.